It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Thursday, May 15th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is talking NHL draft with intel on the centers direct from an NHL scout.
Yep, some good stuff.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. I've been podcasting about the Flyers, the NHL, and hockey for a decade, and I'm here with prospect expert and Flyers credentialed reporter for 19 years, Russ Cohen. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. To keep up with our latest episodes and Flyers news, you can find us at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter. And of course, here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, of course, the big news yesterday was the hiring of Rick Tocchet as the Flyers' new head coach. We did a whole special episode on it yesterday, so take a listen. It's in our YouTube feed as well as your audio feeds. And we will do a show on Friday following the Friday morning press conference, officially announcing the hire with Danny Briere there. So stay tuned for that. You'll see a cut to our recording of the content for today's show, talking about that sixth pick overall and some information about the sixth pick in Caleb Desnoyers versus Anton Frondell. We're going to talk Brady Martin, and we're going to talk a depth pick option in Bruno Idzan, who's really, really fascinating. So stay tuned for that shortly. The little bit of Flyers news that we did not address yet was that Rodrigo Abels got a 1-year deal, $800,000 a year. We've been talking about that for like a couple weeks now, that it sign him, and they did. So that's good.
Yep, we push for that.
Excellent. All right, here's the rest of our episode.
Matvei Michkov got into a car crash over in Dubai. He was not driving. Seems like he's okay, according to reports, but that's all scary.
Yeah, I mean, it takes me back to me, this didn't look that bad, right? And I'm sure he shook up. I don't think it's going to affect his hockey career, but that ATV accident that Ilya Samsonov had, I do think it affected his hockey career. And so young guys have to be careful.
And this is why hockey players' hobbies only include golf and fishing, because that's all they can do to not get hurt. Right.
But, we have seen some younger guys that, I don't want to say are daredevils, because we all felt like that when we were younger, but that definitely pushed the bounds of maybe what's safe or what isn't. You drive fast, you do some things. So does he have it spelled out in his entry-level contract? Probably not.
No.
In a regular contract, like his next contract, those things would be spelled out. No surfing, no this, no that, no skydiving,
skiing, all of that stuff.
But it's probably not in an entry-level deal. So, I'm sure he's okay.
Yeah, I'm sure as well, but not really worried about that as much as who the Flyers might take at 6th overall. And we're continuing that discussion. Yesterday, we talked about what makes a good center overall. Use some examples from the Flyers and started talking about the potential draft picks and the different qualities that a center might have. And Russ, you have some unique insight as a prospect expert, and you've talked to scouts about all of this. And I think, if we're having a discussion of Anton Frondell versus Caleb Desnoyers as an option for the Flyers, you got some unique inside information on that.
I did. I had one scout that's really well connected, and so, the first thing is, the first takeaway was it's a coin flip. Literally, it's a coin flip. But the thing is, they each have different attributes, and he did point out that he still worries about points in the Quebec League, and I get it, and and just the overall, just the overall way they play. He was being honest about that. And we'll get into something else that he said after, which I want to kind of explain. I think it will make more sense. But he mentioned Desnoyers, not only is he really good in the queue, but he was good internationally. So then you take away that. And then he says that's what makes it a harder decision. You lean towards, this person leaned towards Frondell because of the X factor potential with his shooting. His one-timer is great. His wrist shot is great. This particular scout said it wouldn't shock him if, and this is what I alluded to yesterday, like if you put him on the power play on the half wall, you could feed him like those visions of feeding Owen Tippett that have certainly
Right.
not fully worked out. But you could do that even though he's a center. There's no doubt that he's going to play center, both of them. And there's no doubt that Frondell played against men, and that's the little bit of an edge. But then, the last thing this person said was, hey, this is a perfect slot to probably get one of these two guys. And the quote is, if I misspelled something, but you could bang your head against the wall and basically decide what you want. Like, it's going to be like that. Like, you really can't go wrong. And so it's like, okay, so now the other part of this is no Brady Martin. And we'll talk about him later, but he's not in this conversation. I don't think he is either, and that's why he's not in my top 10. And we'll get into all that. But that's the other thing that struck me was that. And then as far as the queue, now people online, I think just because someone says they're honest about the queue and everything else doesn't mean you shouldn't draft anybody from them. So this person felt like, hey, Justin Carbonneau would be terrific as a Flyer. And he is that same kind of like fast, aggressive, really good offensive player, and it reminding him of great Flyers players. So then the question online is, well, how, it's funny that this person says, hey, they don't like the queue, or they told the truth about the queue, and then said take Carbonneau. Well, it's different. You're talking about taking a guy in the 20s or taking someone at 6.
Right.
That's the difference. At 20 something, 22, let's say, you're more willing to look past some things.
Right. And it's obviously, the further down you go, the more risk you're taking with your
Yes.
picks. And sometimes they hit and sometimes they don't. Of course, a first rounder you would assume would hit at least to make it to the NHL, but that's not always the case.
No, it's not.
So and I think again, with the Flyers having multiple picks, you go with more of a tried and true option with the higher pick and take a risk with the lower pick. And that's just, I think, the pragmatic approach that the Flyers should take in this particular case. And, I've said that Frondell would be my pick as well. I think that, he may not be as exciting as some of the other guys in terms of dynamism of play, but he's got all the tools that the Flyers need in a center right now. And I just really feel strongly about that. Now, hopefully he's available. Might not be, but this is how the draft goes, right?
Yes. And we do have to remember, like, he parachuted in to the under 18s. Literally his season had just ended and flew to the under 18s and got in there. So like, this scout was like, I am not holding anything that I saw on a negative basis away from the player. I'm not holding it against the player, rather, because he probably was jet lagged for a day or two, but he still got in there.
He did. He's a competitor. Absolutely. All right. You mentioned Brady Martin, and he, like I said, is somebody who's been rising in some people's estimation, specifically because of a U18's performance. And we are going to talk about him coming up next.
The NHL playoffs are in full swing, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before puck drop and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. From three-pointers to steals to assists in the NBA or goals and assists in the NHL, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. And if you think someone's game is heating up, build that next bet around their play. I still say take the New York Knicks over the Celtics. New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA.
On tomorrow's show, we will, of course, keep up with the head coaching search. Plus, we are going to have our poll results, our first
Yeah.
offseason poll results. We asked who you would pick at 6 with certain players available. Link to that poll is in the show notes. It's over on our YouTube channel. So get your last input in before we talk about it on the Friday show. Brady Martin is a 6-foot center, already 175 pounds, plays for the Soo Greyhounds in the OHL right now. He is a two-way center that is extremely physical
Hmm.
in his play, right?
Yeah, he averages 2.8 hits a game, so that's tops amongst like these centers that get talked about. He plays in all situations, so he plays power play, penalty kill. At the beginning of the year, I said he was an average skater. I think he's just a good skater right now. I don't think he's a great skater. So there is that. And to me, that's one reason why I would never take him at 6, and I wouldn't take him in the top 10 most likely. So, but again, at 10, if every center seems to be gone, would I do it? Yeah, maybe I would. But we'll see. I might take Wilmore instead. But I like Brady Martin. He's a really good player. He can pick the top corners. The hockey IQ is there. It's just I don't know about the high-end offense. He has a smooth one-timer. He gets 28% defensive zone starts. So he's another guy that you're pretty sure is going to be an NHLer. But what you don't know is he a third liner or is he a second liner? Did he rise because of the U18s? And that is something you have to watch out for, the recency bias of it.
Right. So he got 2 goals in the gold medal game against Sweden, right? And I think that, people described his game in some ways as kind of like a bull in a china shop, just like tearing through the opposition there. We have to remember that this is U18s, right?
Yeah.
It's younger guys,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And so he has the ability to do that. And one of the things that I noticed about his game is that he does attack through the center a
Yeah.
lot, and he was able to do that at the U18 level. Not gonna be able to do that at the NHL level. He's
Yeah.
really gonna have to adjust his game, right?
Yeah, and he's not a huge guy. I think he's 6 foot,
175.
175. So he'll maybe get to 190. Certainly, it doesn't stop anybody from trying to play in the middle, but it gets harder. And so, like, if his skating's not going to get him out of trouble in the middle, he is going to have to get a lot stronger if that's where he's going to score his points. And that, to me, is another one where you look at and say, yeah, really like him. That's why I say take him outside of the top 10. But just because he's being talked about, sure, we have to mention him because, I can't say the Flyers aren't going to take him. I don't think they will, but I didn't think they would have taken Jet Luchenko last year. So you don't know. And so based on that, you always have to kind of talk about guys that there's a possibility for.
Right, and I think there's a certain, quote unquote Flyers style to his game, and I
Mhm.
think that's partially why people have him connected to the Flyers right
Yeah.
now. That people can see him as a Flyer in terms of his game. And I think that, they sort of got that with Jet Luchenko. So like why would they do that again in the immediate draft? They could because maybe they just want to hedge their bets here. But to me, you would want a center with a slightly different style game. Like we talked about yesterday, there's
Mhm.
different kinds of centers and I would pick one in a different bucket.
Right. I think what happens, I've seen this enough, is teams could talk themselves out of players. Well, Anton Frondell had some injuries. Yeah, he did. We worried about that. They talk about that. And Jake O'Brien's like a guarantee. There's a lot of things that Jake O'Brien does really well. Do we like him better? Maybe. That's always a maybe. So it's never going to be just to get about Frondell and Desnoyers, and especially if one of them's not there, right? And so if one of them's not there, then all of a sudden they are going to be talking about 4 or 5, even though Desnoyers might be the pick, even if he's there. But the point is, the discussion will be about much greater than they're not going to just walk right up to the podium and make the pick instantly. They're going to talk about it
Right.
for a minute,
Right,
for
exactly.
5
And I
minutes.
I think, like, to your point, Brady Martin is a very good center,
Yeah,
right? He's just not in that top tier of players. He's
yeah,
in like tier 3, I would say,
yeah. I
right?
think
At
that's
the
fair.
bottom of tier 2,
Yeah,
top of tier 3, right? In
yeah.
terms of the centers
Hmm.
in there. And that's a good thing. And that's why, when we're talking about potential second, first round picks,
Hmm.
right? The lower of the 2 picks that the Flyers end up keeping because we're hoping they trade one of them for something good in all of this, right?
Yeah.
I think I think that's where he would come into play a little bit more. Now, people's final rankings have not come out yet, but that being said, the high for him is 12, the low is 53, which is definitely an outlier
All
on
of these
this
are
list.
changing. Yeah, that's an outlier, and even 12 might change in some.
Right,
So
but his median ranking right now is 19, and that seems about right to me, that it would be somewhere
it's going to be
between
higher.
15 to 20 in
Yeah,
there, right?
I think it's probably going to end up at about 15 for the median because I think a
Yeah.
few will put him into the either the top 10 or just outside, and then yeah. So I think that's where it's going to end up because he did have a really great U18s, and you don't want to ignore that, but you have to be careful on how much you're going to weight it. That's why it's not affecting where I have him ranked. Like he could move up a slot based on how other people are in my rankings, but that's why, I spoke to someone who had seen Brady Martin a lot more just to see
Mhm.
what that opinion is.
Right. And one of the other things that I noticed about his game was that he had some really good highlight moments in terms of his net front work,
Yeah.
whether it was making a really good pass to somebody
Hmm.
or really good tip ins, I would say. And that is 100% a need in the Flyers
It is.
organization is somebody who's good net front. And that is probably the most appealing thing about him to me as far as the Flyers potentially taking him, but it's hard to know if that's really a staple of his game or just something he happens to be good at that level right
No, no,
now.
no. I think it's a staple of his game, but I also think that when we watch the Flyers, just because I watch them more than any team now, there always are young guys that are willing to go to the net, and then 2 years into it, they're less willing to go to the net, and then by
Right.
the time year 3 or 4 rolls around, you're like, who's going to the net? And they seem to have this problem every couple of years. Like, who's going to be the net front person?
Yeah, I know. And that's something that I've been talking about for the past couple of years now that again, we have not had a good net front guy
No.
since Wayne Simmons. I would say James
Yeah.
Van Riemsdyk was a attempted
Yeah.
substitute that
Because he could
sometimes worked
deflect.
and
Yep.
sometimes didn't, right? He was
Yeah.
good at the deflection part, but
He did
not
more on
as
the
much.
side than in the middle, taking away
Yeah,
the goalie's eyes. But yeah, he at least was there.
wasn't as good as at the physicality of it as
No.
Wayne Simmons was, right?
Right.
So there were some pros and cons to having JVR do that.
And there
But
is injury that comes with that. Like there's guys that
Mhm.
have been in the league. Chris Kreider is the easy one that comes to mind of this era where there's a price to pay. Tim Kerr paid a great price for that. So that's part of it too.
Yeah. So again, lots to like about Brady Martin. Don't want to take him at 6. That is the
Yeah,
upshot here.
I agree.
All right. A depth round possibility is a forward, Bruno Idzan, who is from Central Europe
Yep.
over in Croatia. So, really intriguing possibility there. We are going to talk about him coming up next. All right, Russ, you wanted to talk about Bruno Idzan here on the show, and he is a 19-year-old, so an
Yep.
overager, but
Overager.
there is a very good reason for that. He actually came over from Central Europe in the Alps Hockey League, which is something I legit didn't really know
I
anything
don't
about,
know him. I don't know
other
him.
other than the fact that it existed. Like, I've seen it on a list of
That's it.
European hockey leagues, and literally that's it. But he came over to play in the USHL this past year as an attempt to get himself known in the North American market in order to declare for the draft this
Right.
year. super smart thing to do, right? So he
Yeah.
played a partial season for the Lincoln Stars in the USHL and wound up with 44 points in 36 games. Not too shabby. Now, overager, so he's on the older side in that league, but
Yes.
still to make that transition, I think it is a really important sign.
It is. I mean, he made the North American transition, and that's what's important here. I think Bruno's interesting because I think he's like a much higher functioning Rodrigo Abels. I think there's
Hmm.
some things there that remind me of him, but he's more talented. And it's nothing against Rodrigo. We saw he signed a 1-year deal. Like we pushed for that, so good for him on that. Um, so with Bruno though, he took 32% defensive zone starts. Like that's tremendous, especially in you're just learning North American hockey. That's a lot of faith. 80% on faceoffs between the two leagues. He's never going to do 80%, but the point is when you start looking at the way he plays, he plays a hard game. He's a really good hustler. He definitely needs to smooth out his skating a little, but I think he's probably never had full instruction for that. So I think that's
Right.
fixable. I like him on the rush. He's definitely got some touch with passing. He's tough in the slot. He's terrific on puck pursuit. This guy doesn't give up on any plays or anything. He's got good size already at 6'1", 195 already. He's the kind of guy that we were talking about yesterday. You're looking for like a specialist. This guy could be your future specialist, whether he's third line or fourth line. And I know where people have him, but if I'm the Flyers, I would spend the third round pick on this guy because, again, he's not getting talked about that much. I think he's going to impress if he's at the combine because of his strength. And I just have a feeling, and you just see the way this guy plays on the ice, and you're like, there's something different about this guy that makes me think he's going to succeed.
Yeah, it just like I'm watching highlights of him. He is so smart. He is
Yes.
so smart. And watching him pick apart on the rush, knowing
Yep.
exactly where to go, whether he has
Yep.
the puck or whether he doesn't have the puck.
Right.
And that is what's impressive to me about him the most. Is just the way he sees the game coming up the ice. And I think that, one of the other good things is that he's already committed to the University of Wisconsin in
Hmm.
26, 27.
Right.
So I think that that will do him a lot of good. And I
Yeah,
think
because he'll
that,
play another full season in North America before even going to college.
yep, yep. And so I think there'll be so much good development time for him. And
Yeah.
then coming out of Wisconsin, as an overager, he'll be at a really good age to compete for an NHL spot right away.
Yep.
At that point, I think he's going to learn so much in the college game. And I think he'll be ahead of the game going into college. Like he's going to be one of those guys, in my opinion, that gets drafted. Nobody really knows who he is,
Yep.
goes to college, and then all of a sudden pops. And everybody's
Right.
like, where'd this guy come from? Right.
Right.
That's exactly the path that I see happening with this guy. He's ranked 109th in the central scouting for North American skaters. So, that does kind of technically put him in the mid-late fourth round in terms of the rankings overall
Yeah.
when you integrate Europeans and all of that. But I think you're right. I think this is a guy that you do take a risk on and take him in the third round.
Yeah, because again, he only played a little more than half a season. His actually full season total, if you include overseas, was 76 points in 53 games. So
Right.
I mean, he's produced in everything, like in every way possibly. He just has no press. There's zero press for him. There's zero buzz. Nobody's talking about him. I'm sure teams do, but nobody out in in the public. And so I felt like, yeah, let's talk about this guy because I think he could be one of those quiet picks that, all of a sudden gets made and you're like, all right, well, who is this guy? And if you
Right.
watch
And
the
then
show, you'll know.
he stepped it up in the playoffs for
Yep.
Lincoln. Now they had a very short run, only played the 6 games, but he got
Yeah.
3 goals. Like that's pretty good,
It's
right?
good. No, that's really good. I think this was a good year of development for him. Next year will be even better. And so, yeah, like I said, not a star, nothing close to that, but a good hockey player.
Yeah. So Flyers, like pay attention.
Yep.
Think about this guy because we
Talk to
love
your
him
European
and
scouts about him.
yeah. Yeah, because I just really think that when you're talking about getting creative and taking
Yeah.
risks, as we've, talked about, that this is a year that maybe not with that 6th overall pick, but every other pick in this draft, the Flyers have to think about taking some risks here and
Yeah.
swinging big,
Yeah.
because they haven't done that as much recently, and you
No.
see other teams reap the rewards, and with this volume of picks, somebody's gonna hit that's gonna make a huge impact on this team.
Right. Like, this is how I would do it. I would have the European scout talk to, one of the North American scouts, whoever's covering the USHL, because he played both. See what the difference is. See what the growth is. That's important. Don't just look at the USHL, look at both.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the right approach. So, Flyers, start talking about Bruno. Anyway, because,
People would
we
like the
don't
name.
talk about Bruno, but we should. We absolutely should. All right, so that will do it for today's show. We will be back tomorrow with the latest on the Flyers coaching search. We're going to wrap up our weekly poll on who you'd pick at 6th overall and so much more. And of course, we always want to hear from you. If you've got mailbag questions or Flyers thoughts on the draft or the coaching search or otherwise, let us know on any of our socials at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Blue Sky and Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology on the same socials, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. For your next listen, check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night, until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale with NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.